Nancy Pelosi is still considering whether or not to form a January 6th commission. This is something that has been in the works for a long time. After January 6th came and went, many people were scratching their heads, myself included, wondering how did something so catastrophic happen? We've got 18 different intelligence community agencies. We've got different layers of law enforcement. We have National Guard all over the place. And somehow one of the most sacred buildings in the United States got taken over by about 1,000 people who knocked over some barricades. So the whole thing was kind of embarrassing as an American from top to bottom, just a catastrophic failure across the board. And so the government has sort of been, kicking the can around a little bit, trying to figure out what to do about this, whether they're going to investigate it and what that investigation looks like. So Pelosi now is kicking around whether she's going to create a January 6th committee. And in fact, she may have already clarified this and decided that she's going to move forward with this. But a big question came up very recently, and Tucker Carlson was somebody who talked about it on his show, and there were some other articles that came out from revolver.news kind of hinting around the idea that maybe the FBI hasn't been as honest with us in this case. Maybe the people who are supposed to be investigating this, the people who were in charge of securing the facility, maybe they had prior knowledge, maybe they kind of dropped the ball a little bit or let their guard down because it would look kind of really, might serve somebody's interest one way or the other if Donald Trump looks like a tyrannical mobster. So, there's a lot of questions being asked about this. And the response to a lot of this has been, oh no, the FBI, no, they would never do something like that. This is our cherished institution. They protect the homeland. It's filled with great people over there. And I'm sure that there are great people over there. No doubt about that. Probably mirrors a lot of the same complaints that I have with law enforcement. But is there any historical context for this? Is there any historical example of when the FBI maybe framed 4 innocent people? There is, in fact. And who is going to guide us through this story? Technofog. Told you, a big fan of his work. He's a lawyer, writer, researcher. Follow him over at twitter.com. And then, of course, go check this out. This is what he wrote on his Substack. When the FBI framed 4 innocent men and how John Durham uncovered the shocking crime. So go check this out. I typically don't like to read from somebody's entire article, but I think we're able to add a little bit to this. And I would encourage you to go support his work over at Substack. But I do believe this is a free article at the moment. So Technofog, thank you for your work. Nice job. Keep it up. All right. So let's get into this article. It says, when the FBI framed 4 innocent men. And as is usually the case, we're going to go through, I've got some emoji explanations and I've got some photographs when they are applicable. But I want to go through this and just sort of diagram what's happening here. The allegation here is the FBI framed 4 innocent men and how they did it. This is the story. Murder. They destroyed families and they tried to cover it up. It's also the story of John Durham and Robert Mueller and how Durham uncovered the crimes and how Mueller's FBI disputed the innocence. Okay, we're going to be talking about these guys. We've got Salvati, Tamalo, and Greco down here, and Limone is somebody who's going to be the subject. He's kind of the main defendant of this case. Up here we have the FBI agents. We've got Morris and Conley. In 1983, Albino down here was a member of the Massachusetts State Parole Board. Albano thought that he was doing his job. He was looking in to commute the sentence of Limone. So he's on the parole board. He's saying, well, we're going to look at Limone and see if we can commute his sentence. Limone had been charged with murdering Deegan down here. Deegan, in conjunction, allegedly Limone with Greco, Tamelo, and Salvati murdered Teddy Deegan. So the convictions, though, never sat right with Albano. He wasn't happy about that. He had suspicions about him because he met with Greco one day, and Greco said he just wanted to live one day as a free man, just one day. So Albano there has some suspicions, and FBI Morris comes to his door, FBI Connolly comes to his door, 1983. They just got some questions for him. Is that the case? No, not really, not at all. FBI special agents John Morris, John Connolly, they weren't there to say hello. See, they got some new emojis now. They're not happy. So they are there. There was a darker purpose, straight up intimidation. So they go to Albano's house. They're intimidating him. They say that it wouldn't be good for Albano's career if he voted for the commutation. So Albano wants to commute Limone's sentence for the murder of Deegan, saying, listen, FBI says, if you do that, not going to be so good for you there, buddy boy. So Albano, though, he commuted them anyways. Particular petition, Limone filed 6 petitions. They were all rejected. Governor Dukakis rejected it because the FBI and U.S. Attorney Bill Weld, they put pressure on Dukakis. They said that Limone was guilty of the murder. He had been involved in the commissioning of the murder, and so on and so forth. Parole board voted in favor of 2 commutations by Greco. Okay, so Greco was denied by Dukakis, denied by Weld. So nobody got out. There was no ruling on the 3rd commutation. He died soon after it was filed. Greco's plea that he just lived one day was never granted. So all of these guys now are in custody, and the parole board is consistently granting them commutations, but the commutations are being denied by the governor. Okay, so he's saying, hey, commute these guys' sentences. Governor says, nope, not going to do that. Governor over here in clown show. FBI leaving a lot of, putting a lot of pressure through the U.S. Attorney's Office on the governor to put pressure on Albano. And so Greco ends up dying, and Tamello and the others, nobody ever ends up getting out yet because the commutations are all denied. So to understand the case now, you have to go back to the 1960s, which is where we're going to go see what J. Edgar Hoover had to do. He's the FBI director. He made it his focus to take down the Italian mob, La Cosa Nostra, by any means necessary. And so to do this, well, he got criminal informants to help him in the process. So let's take a look now at what's going on with the Teddy Deegan murder. So recall here that this is Teddy Deegan. Teddy Deegan is down here, and Teddy Deegan allegedly was killed by Limone, Greco, and Tamello, and Salvati. And so the story is saying that all of these 4 guys were all framed. Let's go to it. Teddy Deegan now was murdered on the night of March 12, 1965. In Boston, he was found behind an alley, glove, screwdriver found near his left hand, tool of his trade. Lieutenant arrived on scene, fresh pool of blood near his left knee, and blood still oozing from the rear of his head. In all, he was shot 6 times with 3 different guns. So you can see him lying there. We also have the officers who recognized Deegan there lying in the alley wouldn't have been surprised. Deegan didn't hang out around the best people, didn't exactly behave himself. They didn't expect Deegan's murder, but they wouldn't have been surprised. But then arrests are made. Okay, we talked about these 4 guys, Salvati, Tamello, Greco, and Limone, for the murder of Deegan. Limone was arrested, meeting with their sons. Greco surrendered to the FBI. He was married, had a couple young children. He returned from the war, disabled from life. He had a shattered ankle. Salvati was 34. He was arrested. Tamello was the oldest of 4 men. So we get a little background on who these guys are, right? These are people. These are human beings. These are not just, people you just throw away. These are people. So the trial and the convictions now. So the state murder trial then started on May 27th, 1968. And so we've got, recall this, right? We've got the government is prosecuting Limone and these 3 other guys, Greco, Tamello, and Salvati, all for the killing of Deegan. So let's make sure we have the actors right. We had, not that Barbosa was innocent. He was indicted for, okay, let me back up. So it says here, Joseph Barbosa, an FBI informant, this guy, so this is his actual picture, testified that Limone and Tamello approved the hit on Deegan. So these 2 guys, Tamello and Limone, they approved the hit on Deegan. And then Greco helped plan the killing, and then Salvati was there with them. So this guy comes in and testifies against all 4 of them. Article goes on, Techno says, Barbosa was innocent, not that he was innocent, but he was indicted for a misdemeanor relating to the murder and was serving time for possessing an illegal firearm. This was part of the deal that the FBI gave to Barbosa. If he comes in and testifies for Massachusetts, they'd let him go with sort of a slap on the wrist. We also have this guy, Stathopoulos, who's also at the scene, and he testifies, he's there, he says that somebody who looked like Greco wanted to get him as well. Other witnesses testified to guilt indicating conduct by the defendant. So it was alleged that Tamello and Greco tried to bribe Barbosa and Stephanopoulos in order to change their testimony. Okay, so sort of, these guys are saying, oh no, they tried to bribe us. So you got all this kind of he said, she said stuff going on here. Now, the FBI continues. So the defense had an uphill battle. The lawyers suspected the FBI might have information or documents relating to witnesses. Okay, so we talk about this in the law. It's called exculpatory evidence. If the government has information and you need that information, well, you got to get it from the government, right? If they're sort of the stewards of the information. If they don't give it to you, you have really no way to get it. And you don't necessarily even know what they have, right? So it's very important, the Supreme Court has said, when the government has exculpatory information, or they have data that they need to that might show that you are innocent or might tend to prove your innocence, they've got to disclose that over to you. In this case, the defense attorneys here were saying, well, we think that they might have something, but the FBI didn't produce anything. They produced nothing. So the case went to trial. Jury reached its verdict July 31, 1968. 4 men found guilty. Greco, first-degree murder, accessories before the fact, accessories after the fact, conspiracy, and so on. Now, they all, 3 of them received the death penalty. Salvati was sentenced to life. Convictions brought the attention of FBI Director Hoover, with the Boston office sending memos saying this was a direct result of the FBI investigation. FBI agents involved in the case, they testified, they got awards, and they've got letters of commendation. They later received large bonuses, and they were praised by Director Hoover. Well done, guys. Outstanding. You got the 4 people who killed this guy. They're all going to face the death penalty or life in prison. Here's a job. Here's a commendation. Here's a bonus. FBI Director Hoover. Now, the article goes through, we're going to go through this quickly. 4 families, of course, were all devastated. Been distraught since the arrest. Hard for the wives. Children had it worse. Going through, cold prison gates. Girls' anxiety. Henry Tamalo was the oldest of 4. Okay, these are people, is the point of this section. Greco's conviction. His son was just 10 years old. Son contemplated suicide, right? Boy's mother, Roberta, stopped cooking and cleaning. Families are devastated. Greco's health suffered. Same fate as his family. Lost control of his bowels. Salvati helped clean up after him. Greco's right leg was amputated below the knee due to gangrene. He died in prison, 1995, okay? Somebody died in prison. Now, if you say that he was a guilty person, maybe you're not too bothered by that, but let's see what happens. 2 years later, his son committed suicide by drinking a can of Drano. His other son, Eddie, struggled with cocaine and heroin addiction. He would also eventually die from what was likely an overdose. So, very catastrophic when stuff like this happens. Wrecks everybody. And it should not be looked at lightly, obviously. Okay, now let's go in. Now, what did the FBI know about this? We now have the story. We know what happened here. Sounds pretty obvious, right? Okay, well, what does the FBI know, according to Technofog? Well, there were FBI secrets about these convictions for 30 years. These secrets went all the way up to the FBI Director Hoover. They were uncovered in late 2000 by then Assistant U.S. Attorney John Durham. Remember this guy? Where'd he go? Here's Hoover. We've got the FBI framed 4 innocent men for murder. This setup was known to, supported by, encouraged, and facilitated by the FBI hierarchy all the way up to the FBI director. We're going to get back to that footnote here later. To understand the conspiracy, we got to go back to the 1960s. FBI Director Hoover, he wanted to take down La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mob, by any means necessary. Part of that task involved focusing on Raymond Patriarca, powerful New England organized crime boss. This guy right here. 1962, FBI installed a wire in his Providence without a warrant. Conversations were monitored and they were forwarded to the FBI's Boston office. This was kept secret even within the FBI because it was illegal. There was no warrant. Per Judge Gertner, somebody who is sort of dealing with this case in the aftermath, FBI reports describing conversations on the wire refer to it as if it were a human source, an informant, just like any other. Okay, and so we've got the Sicilian Mafia over here. They talk about Lucky Luciano here with the Sicilian Mafia. Let's see what comes up next here. We've got the FBI also made use of informants and with whom their agents were to have a secret long-term relationship. We got this guy. His name is, per Technofog's article, Jimmy Fleming. His full name is Vincent James Fleming. So we got Jimmy Fleming here, and his birthday is September 5th, 1935. Career criminal, and he's also a top FBI informant. Okay, so now what we see what's going on here? We have an FBI informant, named Jimmy Fleming. So FBI had known of his criminal history, knew that Fleming had been involved in a number of murders, but he was a top informant. Condon, one of the agents also handling Fleming, had been informed in 64 and 65 that he committed several murders. Didn't matter to FBI agent Dennis Condon, his Boston FBI supervisor, or even Hoover. Yeah, he could get close to Patriarca and other mob figures, therefore he had potential. So they just wanted to use this guy to get close to the Italian mob. Jimmy Fleming was eventually closed as an informant in 1965. His brother Stephen also began informing for the FBI. Stephen was also a career criminal, gangster, and killer. So now we've got a situation where we've got an FBI informant, somebody who's providing a lot of information on a very high-profile mob, the Patriarcha, and the Italian mob. And so the FBI Hoover wants really to make sure that they go get them. We got Vincent Fleming, even though he is a known murderer, a career criminal, he's been a top FBI informant for a long time, and they know that he's got close access to Patriarcha. They want to make sure that he doesn't get busted for anything because he's going to help them get somebody else. Now, we've got the FBI's knowledge now of the plot to kill Deegan. So remember, we've got now a wire in Patriarcha's thing. We've got wires all over the place. They're doing stuff without warrants. And all of this actually, if you're asking where this information came from, this case came from an actual opinion because a court dealt with this later down the line after all of this started to get uncovered. So this is coming from official court documents. The FBI's plot now to kill Deegan. So if the FBI has, bugs all over the place, they're listening to everything, did they know about this? Okay, many people are sort of asking the same question about Capitol Hill. Wait a minute. Sounds like the FBI was on top of all this. They were warning us all the time that there were these white supremacists all over the country that were going to wreak havoc all over the place. So if they are the FBI and the intelligence community, wouldn't you suspect that they have some intelligence about an insurrection that's bubbling up and taking place? And if so, if they were sort of embedded in those organizations, why didn't they do anything to stop it? Why didn't they prevent it from happening if they were so embedded? And if they weren't embedded, why weren't they? If they're claiming that these organizations are such criminal illegal operations, well, then why are they not infiltrating the criminal illegal operations? Or is it maybe that they're mischaracterizing some of them? I don't know, but let's see. What did the FBI know when there was this plot to kill Teddy Deegan back in 1960s? The wires and the informants against Patriarcha, this guy, were already well underway in 1965. In 1964, the FBI learned on 2 occasions that Jimmy Fleming, this guy, you'll notice, not one of the 4 defendants, wanted to kill Deegan. FBI knew that. This is Hoover. So Hoover is aware of this conversation happening here. 5 months later, 1965, Jimmy Fleming met with Patriarcha and asked for permission to kill Deegan. Okay, so now Fleming comes over here, meets with Patriarcha, and he says, hey, can I kill this guy Deegan? A couple days later, Fleming returned with Joseph Barboza and asked for an okay to kill him. Fleming thought Deegan was an arrogant, nasty sneak and should be killed. Okay, so now Fleming then go and meets with Barboza, and Barboza, they both want to kill Deegan. 2 days prior to Deegan's murder, an informant advised the FBI that Raymond Patriarcha, a powerful New England organized crime boss, had ordered a hit on Deegan. They had already completed a dry run, and a close associate of Deegan's had agreed to set him up. The FBI knew it was coming because they were listening to all these calls. They got informants and everybody's talking back and forth. Hoover's just kind of watching all this happen. We have this document that comes out. It says, regarding Edward Deegan, crime conditions in Greater Boston. We got Raymond L. Patriarcha, also listed here. Informant advised that he had just heard from Jimmy Fleming, that Fleming told the informant that Raymond Patriarcha had put out the word that Edward Teddy Deegan is to be, quote, hit, and that a dry run has already been made, and that a close associate of Deegan's has agreed to set him up. Fleming told the informant that the informant for the next few evenings should have a provable alibi. In case he is suspected of killing Deegan, Fleming indicated that the informant that Patriarcha put the word out on Deegan because Deegan evidently pulled a gun and threatened some people in the Ebb Tide restaurant in Revere, Massachusetts. So Deegan offended somebody, and the hit went out on him by Patriarcha. Fleming and Barboza, they go over to have a conversation with Patriarcha, say, hey, can we hit this guy? He says, yeah, certainly. Why? Because he went and he insulted me at my Ebb Tide restaurant in Revere, Massachusetts. So then Deegan, of course, is actually executed March 12, 1965. This was the same day that one of his killers, Jimmy Fleming, was assigned to be developed as an informant. Okay, so the actual story now is that Fleming and Barboza were responsible for it. The FBI's knowledge, the FBI never doubted who killed Teddy Deegan. They knew. The day after the murder, an FBI informant reported Jimmy Fleming confessed to the killing, along with Roy French, Joseph Romeo Martin, Ronnie Caseso, and Joseph Barboza. 3 months later, Hoover was informed that Fleming had participated in the murder. This guy and this guy, Barboza. And if you recall, earlier on, these 2 people were a part of the trial taking place against the four co-defendants. The FBI was able to put together exactly how the murder was supposed to go down. After the hit was approved by Patriarca, the men planned to kill Deegan when he and an associate, who was also to be killed, were robbing a place in Chelsea. French was to tip off the killers as to the time and the location. The death had the criminal world talking. March 13, 1965, the day after the murder, a top FBI informant reported Fleming confessed to the murder with French, Romeo, Martin, Caseso, and Barbosa. That account would be repeated over and over with minor variations in every single document the FBI had before Barbosa started cooperating. Other accounts supported that theory of the murder as well. Chelsea police had information that the men had been seen leaving the restaurant together at 9 p.m., returned 45 minutes later. Other informants came forward 11 days after Deegan's murder. In 1965, it was reported that the FBI, that Barbosa, this guy, also admitted to the killing. The memo below shows that Director Hoover, the director of the FBI, was informed that the FBI's own informants had murdered Deegan. Here's that document. Following are developments during the current week, I think. Criminal Intelligence Program, Boston Division. Hey, on March 12, 1965, Edward Teddy Deegan was found killed in the alleyway. Gangland fashion. Informants reported that Ronald Casesa, Ronald Martin, Vincent James Fleming, Joseph Barbosa, prominent local hoodlums, were responsible for the killing. They accomplished this by having Roy French, another Boston hoodlum, set Deegan up in a proposed breaking and entering. French apparently walked in behind Deegan just as they were gaining entrance to the building and fired the first shot, hitting Deegan in the back of the head. Casesa and Martin immediately thereafter shot Deegan from the front. Anthony Stathopoulos was also in on the burglary, but had remained outside in the car. Okay, so these guys just, set him up, execute him, walk in like they're doing a breaking and entering, shoot him in the back of the head as soon as the door goes off. And that's it. Hoover now, this information wasn't shared with state authorities. All of that information that was being held with the FBI never made it to the state authorities, never made it to the defense counsel. As a result, this became a criminal conspiracy by the FBI hierarchy all the way up to Director Hoover. This guy right here. And can't happen today? Really? How did this all come about? Well, Durham started digging into this. 1995 information of the Whitey Bulger's relationship with corrupt FBI agents became public. FBI started to investigate the Boston field office. This included a review of documents relating to Limone's case. In 2000, Durham uncovered memos from the 1960s detailing the misconduct. He gave them over to the DOJ, U.S. Attorney's Office, state and prosecutors, and the FBI. As a result, the county district attorney's office immediately filed a motion to vacate the conviction. They wanted to grant Limone a new trial and then admit him to bail. Okay? In 2000, decades later, Judge Margaret Hinkle of the Superior Court ruled that Durham's documents were material, they were exculpatory, and they cast real doubt on the justice of his convictions. Obviously, the state cases against Salvati and Limone, the only two still alive, were dropped. Greco and Tamello died already in prison. Their cases were posthumously dropped. So 2 people are released, 2 people are dead because the FBI covered up for their informants who actually committed the murder. They were very useful informants to them, so it served them to make sure that they didn't go to prison for this stuff. 4 other people did. Now, Mueller, once he uncovered the documents, the Massachusetts Pardon Board reached out to Director Mueller. Remember Robert Mueller, the estimable person who was going to go out and take out Donald Trump for all his improprieties? Asking the FBI, they're asking about their official response to the evidence. Boston field office provided a shameful response that new evidence of an FBI setup did not mean that the men were innocent. They do this all the time. It's disgusting. It merely means that they are entitled to, quote, a new trial. Right? Here's what they say. January 5th, we got an order from the court, vacates all those things. Based on the conversations, it's our understanding that some of these documents came out, somebody was shot and killed, blah, blah, blah. This does not necessarily mean, however, that Limone or any of the other defendants is innocent. It merely means they're entitled to a new trial. Okay? Because the FBI would never want to admit that they did anything wrong. Much of the FBI confidential source relates to them. They were involved as principals. This information is not necessarily inconsistent, so they're just going to cover up for themselves, right? They know exactly what happened. They know where this went, and they did it anyways. So where did this all come from? We've got the aftermath of the lawsuit. Eventually, the surviving men and their families, along with the families of the deceased, filed suit against the FBI, saying they obstructed their civil rights. Turns out that the FBI had been hiding evidence from their own lawyers. This caused judge to say that this matter should be brought to the personal attention of the director of the FBI, Robert Mueller. After a bench trial, Judge Gertner concluded this was about intentional misconduct. This was about subordination of perjury, conspiracy, the framing of 4 innocent men. She awarded them $100 million in damages. For the wrongly convicted, though, well, it's never going to be enough. Okay, they spent their life in prison. They also lost 2 colleagues. Two of their co-defendants are dead. Meanwhile, the FBI headquarters is still called the J. Edgar Hoover Building. Mueller enjoys at least a good reputation with some, and Durham still quietly looks for the truth. Great article here from Technofog. That is the link. Go check him out. These are his sources. So he did some heavy lifting on this. Now, this, as he says, a lot of this comes from this opinion, Judge Nancy Gertner's July 26, 2007 memo and civil litigation. So if you want to read the full case, that is where you will find it. But of course, Techno summarized it very nicely for us. But the question here, sort of the takeaway, the reason I wanted to share this story with you is because it begs the question, a lot of people live in this little fantasy world where they start thinking that all of our law enforcement agents and the FBI and the CIA and the ATF and the DOJ and all the U.S. attorneys, and they're all just amazing people with just great hearts. And they would never do anything that would potentially incriminate somebody who didn't actually do it, right? We all live under this fallacy, this idea that if somebody's in handcuffs or if somebody's arrested or if the cops knock on your door, well, you must have done something wrong, right? No, it doesn't happen that way. And, this was back in the 1960s. We have a bigger FBI with more bureaucracy, that's more politicized, that has even more documented histories of malfeasance, especially related to Donald Trump. We've got the FBI lovers case. We've got all of the improprieties as they relate to all of the other Trump administration officials. The list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of questions now about what happened at January 6th. We're now seeing the FBI wants to get involved in local enforcement of drug crimes and violent gun crimes throughout the different states and cities throughout the rest of America. So we're on track for a very interesting justice transition under this new administration. And I personally am not somebody who is looking forward to where this is going. We'll see where it goes, but we're going to stay here and we're going to continue to hold the line against this type of government misconduct, lack of accountability, lack of transparency. It's why we started the whole show here. All right. So unfortunately, there are people who are in situations like this that are absolutely innocent, but they're charged with crimes. We just heard about 4 innocent people that the FBI framed. If you know somebody who is facing criminal charges in similar circumstances, give our law office a call. We are the R&R Law Group. We can help with any type of crime here in the state of Arizona: felony charges, drug charges, traffic tickets, DUI charges, anything and everything in between. We can help you remove a mugshot off the internet. We can clear up old criminal records. We can help you restore your right to vote, restore your right to possess a firearm, so you can get back to enjoying those constitutional rights that you should be entitled to. We'll help you get that cleared up. And we offer free case evaluations, and we love to help good people facing criminal charges find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their lives. We would appreciate your referrals. If you're not interested in criminal law, or hiring a criminal law firm, I should be more specific, you may be interested in learning something about criminal law. And so I want to share with you my gumroad.com/Robert Grueller address. We did a 2.5-hour law enforcement interaction training, which is available here if you want to take a look at that. If you want to follow, we've got some other courses I'm working on right now. Throw that in there or take a picture on your cell phone, and that will take you right directly to the link. We have existence systems, and we have a legal mastermind. If you're a lawyer or a legal professional, certainly check that out. And I certainly want to make sure that you head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we have a lot of other activity that takes place throughout the day. I'm starting to post a little bit more behind the scenes stuff, so sort of, a little bit more informal, impromptu stuff over there. But the real reason to be there is because when we have a live show, we do live chats at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we also have a monthly meetup that's coming up this Saturday. And so you can get the registration link over there. And we really do appreciate all your support. Thank you so much for that.